Emeka came to Lagos with nothing but a small bag, a worn-out suit, and big dreams. When he got a job as a junior analyst at a well-known tech company, he thought his life was finally beginning to take shape. Every morning, he was the first to arrive and the last to leave, often staying late to learn new things. He believed that hard work would make people notice him. But his boss, Mr. Adewale, saw him as nothing more than an errand boy. Whenever Emeka spoke, the man barely looked up. "Go make photocopies," he'd say, "or run down and get my lunch." Still, Emeka never complained. He worked quietly, believing that one day, his effort would speak for him. In meetings, he sat at the back, scribbling ideas that no one asked for. His colleagues mocked his seriousness. "Not only you sabi work," they'd tease. But Emeka didn't care. He wasn't just working for today. He was building something inside himself. He often looked at the company logo and whispered, "Someday, I'll build something like this." It became his silent promise. One evening after everyone had gone home, he stayed behind fixing a system bug that no one else could solve. Mr. Adewale came in, saw him still working and shook his head. "You think working late makes you a leader?" he said with a smirk. "You'll never lead this company, boy." The words hit deep, but Emeka forced a smile. "Maybe not this one, sir," he replied quietly. "But someday." As he walked out that night, the city lights of Lagos shimmered like possibilities waiting to be claimed. He looked at them and felt something burn inside him. A fire that no insult could kill. He might be just a junior analyst today, but he knew he was learning what others ignored. He was observing, growing, and planning. Nobody could see it yet, but Emeka was preparing for a future that would one day shock them all. During the monthly company meeting, everyone gathered around the long conference table. It was one of those days when Mr. Adewale liked to show off his authority. Emeka sat quietly at the end, clutching his notes. He had spent nights working on a proposal that could save the company money and improve workflow. When the floor opened for suggestions, his heart raced, but he raised his hand anyway. "Sir, I think if we integrate our data systems and automate the reporting process, we can reduce delays and errors," he said with confidence. For a brief second, there was silence. Then Mr. Adewale threw his head back and laughed. "You led this company," he said loudly, his tone dripping with mockery. "You can't even lead yourself." The room erupted with uneasy chuckles. Some people avoided looking at Emeka, others tried to hide their smiles. Emeka felt his chest tighten, his ears burning. He wanted to disappear. Still, he sat straight, trying not to show how much it hurt. Mr. Adewale continued, "Next time, leave ideas to people who understand real business." The words hit harder than any slap. Emeka's pen trembled in his hand, but he didn't respond. He knew that defending himself would only make things worse. As the meeting went on, he stared at the table, pretending to take notes while his mind screamed. Every word of laughter echoed inside his head. He had believed that hard work would earn him respect, but in that moment, he realized respect wasn't given, it was taken. When the meeting ended, he quietly packed his things. As he walked past the same people who had laughed, no one met his eyes. Outside, the Lagos sun felt heavy, pressing against his face as he took a deep breath. He replayed Mr. Adewale's words again and again until anger turned into determination. "You'll never lead this company," the man had said. Emeka whispered under his breath, "Then I'll build my own." It wasn't just a dream anymore. It was a vow. That moment of humiliation would become the fire that changed everything. He didn't know how yet, but one day, they would all remember this meeting for the wrong reason. Days turned into months, and nothing changed for Emeka. No matter how hard he worked, he remained invisible. His ideas, once dismissed in meetings, started reappearing, but coming from other people's mouths. He'd see slides and presentations that used his exact words, yet someone else got the praise. When he tried to speak up, Mr. Adewale would glare at him saying, "Don't make noise, just do your job." It became routine. Emeka worked the hardest, but others took the credit. Every evening, he'd pack up the leftover files, the office empty except for him, wondering if anyone even noticed the effort he put in. Sometimes he overheard jokes about him in the break room. "Analyst boy," they called him. Still, he stayed focused. He told himself he was learning. Even if no one appreciated it now, it would pay off someday. But things only got worse. When projects failed, he was the easiest scapegoat. Emeka didn't follow instructions, his boss would claim, even when everyone knew it wasn't true. The humiliation started to eat away at him. His spark began to fade. Then one Friday afternoon, everything snapped. A small error in a report, caused by another department, was pinned on him. Mr. Adewale called him out in front of everyone. "You're useless," he barked. "You can't handle small tasks and you think you can lead?" The office went quiet. Emeka stood still, fighting back tears. For the first time, he didn't apologize. He simply took a deep breath and said, "Sir, I think it's time I move on." A smirk spread across Mr. Adewale's face. "You're walking away from the best you'll ever get," he said mockingly. "You'll never lead anywhere." The words hung in the air as Emeka nodded and quietly walked out. His co-workers watched silently, some with pity, some with relief that it wasn't them. When he stepped outside, the city noise hit him like a rush of freedom. He felt pain, anger, but also a strange calm. For the first time in years, he wasn't anyone's errand boy. As he walked down the street, his mind cleared. The humiliation, the lies, the stolen credit, all of it had built something stronger inside him. He didn't know it yet, but that was the day Emeka stopped working for someone else's dream and started preparing to build his own. After leaving the company, Emeka spent weeks searching for direction. He had little savings and no steady income, but he had a dream that refused to die. One morning he walked into a small co-working space in Yaba, the kind with flickering lights, noisy fans, and desks squeezed too close together. It wasn't much, but to him, it felt like a new beginning. He registered his startup name, Next Phase Analytics, because he believed his next phase was about to begin. He used his old laptop, the one that took 5 minutes to boot, and started reaching out to small businesses, offering to help them use data to grow. His first call was to Ngozi, a brilliant software developer he had met during a training program. "Ngozi, I want to build something that helps companies work smarter," he said. "It won't be easy, but I believe in it." She laughed softly. "If you're in, I'm in," she said. And just like that, they became a team. Their office was barely bigger than a bedroom, but it held big dreams. They shared one fan, 2 old laptops, and endless hope. Days blended into nights as they worked tirelessly. Sometimes, they had to borrow internet from a nearby cafe. When hunger struck, they shared bowls of noodles and laughed through the struggle. There were days no clients replied, and moments when doubt crept in. "Maybe we should pause," Ngozi would say, and Emeka would shake his head. "No. We've come too far to stop now." His belief was their fuel. He spent hours knocking on company doors, pitching their services to anyone who would listen. Most turned him away. Some laughed when they saw their small setup, but Emeka refused to quit. "They laughed at me before," he would whisper. "Let them laugh again." At night, he studied marketing, leadership, and data tools online, learning what big companies paid millions to know. Even when their electricity was cut off, and they had to work under phone flashlights, Emeka stayed focused. He believed that small beginnings had great endings. In that tiny room, surrounded by noise, struggle, and dreams, the foundation of something extraordinary was being built. A story that was only just beginning to rise. For months, Emeka and Ngozi lived on a shoestring. Breakfast, lunch, and sometimes dinner were noodles, rice, or whatever they could afford. Their tiny workspace smelled faintly of burnt coffee and determination, but neither complained. Every day, they drafted proposals, coded solutions, and pitched their ideas to companies that barely gave them a second glance. Most laughed at the sight of their small team and outdated laptops. "You want to fix my business with this?" Some executives sneered, closing doors without a second thought. Rejection became routine. Each no stung, but it also sharpened Emeka's resolve. He studied each failure, asking himself how to do it better. Ngozi stayed by his side, debugging, brainstorming, and keeping the morale alive. "One win is enough," she reminded him on nights they almost gave up. Emeka nodded, holding on to the belief that every giant company had started somewhere. Their break finally came when a local retail chain agreed to a small pilot project. Emeka poured all his energy into it, analyzing customer data, streamlining operations, and creating a simple, actionable plan. Within a month, the business saw a drastic improvement. Sales doubled, customer complaints dropped, and the manager couldn't hide his astonishment. "This kid, he actually knows what he's doing," he muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. Word began to spread quietly. Clients who had once ignored them now called with curiosity and hope. Small companies whispered about the young man, who could fix problems no one else could. The nickname stuck, that young guy who fixes companies. It wasn't overnight fame, but it was respect earned the hard way. Emeka and Ngozi stayed humble, remembering the sleepless nights, the noodles, the countless doors slammed in their faces. They reinvested every small profit back into the business. A better laptop, a printer, some marketing, a small team expansion. Slowly, the phone in their office rang more often, and each call was a new opportunity. Through sacrifice, hunger, and sheer persistence, the young team began transforming their small consultancy into something bigger. It wasn't just money they were building. It was credibility, trust, and a reputation that would eventually open doors they hadn't even dreamed of. The struggle was real, painful, but it was also the seed of their inevitable success. 2 years of long nights, endless pitches, and sleepless weekends finally began to pay off. Next phase: analytics, once just a cramped room with flickering lights and old laptops, was now gaining attention from serious businesses. Companies that had ignored Emeka before were now calling him, asking how his small team could fix problems that big consulting firms struggled with. His reputation for honesty, creativity, and delivering results spread like wildfire. Clients trusted that he would keep his word, meet deadlines, and provide solutions they couldn't find anywhere else. Investors started noticing the consistent growth. They visited the office, impressed by the energy, determination, and vision that Emeka and Ngozi had cultivated. After careful discussions, they agreed to fund the expansion, allowing Emeka to hire young, talented professionals eager to make a mark. The office, once cramped and chaotic, slowly transformed into a dynamic hub of innovation. Walls were painted, laptops upgraded, and the hum of focused employees replaced the lonely silence of their early days. Irony soon revealed itself in unexpected ways. Several of their new clients were former employees of Emeka's old company, the same people who had once ignored or mocked him. They approached him now with curiosity and a hint of awe. "You're doing what your old boss never could," one of them said during a meeting, shaking his hand. Another nodded in agreement, adding, "I wish he had your vision back then." Emeka listened quietly, feeling no anger, only quiet satisfaction. Each successful project boosted their visibility further. Local newspapers and online media picked up stories of how a young Nigerian entrepreneur had turned small companies into profitable ventures using smart strategies and determination. Emeka's name became synonymous with trust and ingenuity in the Lagos business community. The small boy who had once been laughed at in meetings was now the man companies called when they needed results. Despite the growing fame, Emeka remained humble. He remembered the nights of instant noodles, the pitch rejections, the stolen ideas, and the sneers from his old boss. Those memories fueled him, reminding him why he started and why he refused shortcuts. This turning point wasn't just about success. It was the moment when all the sacrifices, struggles, and perseverance finally converged, proving that hard work and integrity could outshine arrogance and doubt. One morning, while sipping his coffee and scrolling through business news, Emeka stumbled across a headline that made his heart skip. His former company, the very place where he had been humiliated, was struggling financially. Poor management, dwindling clients, and costly mistakes had brought the once thriving firm to the brink of collapse. The board, desperate to salvage what they could, was quietly seeking buyers to take over the company before it fell apart completely. Emeka's mind raced. Memories of long hours, stolen ideas, and public mockery flooded back. He pictured Mr. Adewale, the same boss who had laughed at him in front of the office, now possibly facing the consequences of his arrogance. A small, almost mischievous smile tugged at Emeka's lips. He opened the business listing and saw the opportunity clearly. The company was on the market, undervalued, and desperate for competent leadership. Fate, it seemed, had opened a door he had only dreamed of walking through. That evening, he called Ngozi into their office. She leaned back in her chair, her laptop glowing in the dim light. "I found something," Emeka said, excitement and caution mingling in his voice. He explained everything, showing her the financial reports, the sale listing, and the potential of turning the failing company around. Ngozi listened carefully, nodding slowly, a smile forming on her face. "Emeka," she said softly. Maybe this is your moment. Her words hit him like a spark to dry grass. He felt a rush of adrenaline and clarity at the same time. All the struggle, all the sacrifice, had been preparing him for this exact moment. What once seemed impossible, confronting the past and turning it into victory, was now within reach. They spent the night running numbers, planning strategy, and imagining how the acquisition could unfold. The stakes were high, but so were the possibilities. For the first time, Emeka felt a mix of excitement and power, a feeling that he was about to reclaim not just a company, but his own narrative. By the end of the night, both Emeka and Ngozi were certain. This was no longer just a business opportunity. It was poetic justice, a chance to show the world that the boy who was laughed at had grown into a man ready to lead, succeed, and change the very company that had once doubted him. Emeka didn't waste a moment. He reached out to a trusted investor he had worked with before, someone who had seen his dedication, creativity, and ability to turn struggling businesses into success stories. After a series of meetings and presentations, the investor agreed to back him fully. Together, they negotiated quietly, making sure every detail of the acquisition was in place. Emeka felt a mix of nerves and exhilaration. This was the moment he had imagined during countless nights of struggle, and it was finally real. The paperwork was intense. Contracts, financial statements, and legal documents stretched across the table for hours, but Emeka went through each one meticulously. Signing his name at the bottom of the final document felt like the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. With that signature, he officially became the new CEO of the very company where he had once been humiliated, underestimated, and ignored. The reality hit him. He was now in charge of the empire that had once tried to crush his dreams. The announcement went out to staff the next morning. The office, once filled with familiar sneers and whispers, fell into stunned silence. Employees exchanged shocked glances as Emeka walked in, confident but composed. Whispers traveled fast. It's Emeka, he bought the company? Some older staff members stared in disbelief, struggling to process that the junior analyst they had overlooked was now their leader. And then there was Mr. Adewale. He had been the one to mock, belittle, and humiliate Emeka countless times. Now, standing in the reception area, watching the news spread through the office, he was speechless. Security escorted him out quietly, and for the first time, he realized that arrogance and underestimating talent had consequences. His smug demeanor was gone, replaced with shock and regret. Emeka, meanwhile, walked through the familiar corridors, the walls and offices now under his leadership. He smiled, but not with malice. It was a calm, victorious smile, the kind that comes from knowing you earned every bit of this moment. The boy who had been laughed at, pushed aside, and dismissed was now the man in charge, setting a new tone of leadership, vision, and respect. The company was his to transform, and he was ready. The first staff meeting as CEO was a moment Emeka had dreamed of quietly for years. Walking into the boardroom, he felt a familiar tension. The same room, the same podium, the same faces that had once doubted him. But this time, everything was different. He wasn't the junior analyst anymore. He was the one in charge, the one setting the vision for the company's future. The staff, some curious and some skeptical, sat quietly, waiting to see what the new leadership would bring. Emeka stepped up to the podium, letting his eyes scan the room. He paused for a moment, remembering the humiliation, the stolen ideas, the ridicule, and the countless nights of struggle. Then with calm confidence he spoke. I know many of you have seen me as just another employee, maybe someone who could never lead, he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. But I want you to remember this. Never let someone's doubt define your destiny. What they laughed at yesterday may lead them tomorrow. A silence followed. Then slowly, applause began to rise. It started with a few hands, then grew louder, until the entire room was clapping. Even those who had ignored him or doubted his abilities joined in, realizing that they were witnessing more than a CEO. They were seeing a story of resilience, perseverance, and triumph. Some wiped tears from their eyes, others smiled with respect. Cameras in the room flashed as journalists and staff documented the historic moment. Phones lit up and soon snippets of the speech were trending online. Within hours, Emeka's story went viral. Social media filled with comments praising his determination, his courage to rise above ridicule, and his ability to turn humiliation into motivation. Messages of encouragement came from strangers, business leaders, and aspiring young professionals inspired by his journey. The hashtag Never Doubt Emeka began trending, symbolizing hope and resilience for everyone who had ever been dismissed or laughed at. Emeka watched the reaction quietly, a sense of calm satisfaction washing over him. This was more than just a career victory. It was poetic justice and a full-circle moment. The boy who had once been laughed at, humiliated, and ignored had now become the man commanding respect, inspiring others, and showing that persistence, integrity, and vision could rewrite a destiny. The applause, the flashes, and the online acclaim were the echoes of years of struggle finally transforming into lasting triumph. Emeka walked slowly through the quiet hallways of his old office, the same corridors he had once cleaned late at night as a junior analyst. The polished floors now reflected the soft overhead lights, but to him, they held memories of exhaustion, struggle, and silent determination. Each door he passed reminded him of a time when he had been invisible, overlooked, and underestimated. He paused in front of a small, faded corner where his old name tag still hung. Emeka, Assistant Analyst. A wave of nostalgia hit him, mingled with pride. He reached out, touched the tag gently, and smiled. So much had changed. The long hours, the stolen ideas, the ridicule, and the constant doubt had all led him to this very moment. Carefully, he removed the name tag and placed it in his office drawer, a quiet token of his journey. It was a reminder of where he had started and how far he had come. He whispered softly to himself, "This is where the boy they laughed at became the man they report to." The words felt like a release, a celebration of resilience, and a recognition of every sacrifice made along the way. Sitting at his new CEO desk, Emeka allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. The office buzzed softly with activity as employees moved around, some still whispering about the remarkable transformation of the company and its leader. Cameras flashed occasionally, journalists capturing the story of the young man who had risen from humble beginnings to command a company with vision, honesty, and determination. Yet for Emeka, the real victory was quiet and personal. He leaned back, letting the weight of the past years settle around him, not as a burden, but as proof of his journey. Every rejection, every insult, every sleepless night had built the foundation for this success. He knew the story would inspire others, those who were laughed at, dismissed, or underestimated, to believe that persistence, integrity, and faith in oneself could change destiny. As he looked out the window at the Lagos skyline, the city lights sparkling with endless possibilities, Emeka's voice echoed in his mind. "They said I'd never lead this company, so I bought it." The words captured the triumph, the vindication, and the poetic justice of his journey. It was not just a professional victory, it was a personal revolution. The boy who had once felt powerless was now in control, standing as a symbol of resilience, courage, and unstoppable determination.